Dr. Wright here with a quick explanation about what are Aryans. Now, we want to distinguish between an actual group of Indo-Iranian people whose cultural movements are sort of recorded here on this map, and the fake Aryans, in the scare quotes here, which is a invented race derived for the purposes of white supremacy. That's the kind of Aryan that Hitler is talking about. So we want to figure out, where does this idea come from? It starts in 19th century linguistics with folks like Franz Bopp right here or Max Muller. And what folks then realized is that when you compare some Indian languages like Sanskrit or Iranian along with Greek and Latin, Germanic languages, Celtic languages, Slavic languages even, it turns out that they have a lot of grammatical, syntactical, and even vocabulary features in common. And so they figured that there must be some kind of ancestor language that lies behind all of this, which they called Indo-European. Now, this is just a reconstructed language, and you can get a PhD in Indo-European if you wanted to, but there's not a whole lot that we can really confirm about it empirically. We have to do it through the filter of these other languages. Now, what people then tried to do, putting aside for the fact that there were real Aryans, such as how King Darius of Persia referred to himself in this inscription here, which is in modern-day Iran, the assumption for these 19th century thinkers is that from close linguistic and literary study, you can derive all sorts of historical, anthropological, and cultural data, which is true, but offers actually really limited perspective on a culture, which you could see, for example, in the types of different conclusions you get, say, from studying Egyptian literature versus studying Egyptian archaeology. But what complicates this even further is that unlike French or Spanish, which are living languages, or Greek and Latin, which have a lot of, testimony and literary stuff left over, Indo-European is a reconstructed language. You have all these other layers of cultural and intellectual biases that get built in there, which make any conclusions you derive from it a bit suspect. What then these thinkers are doing from this Indo-European evidence is to come up with a race of speakers of Indo-European, and they call these Aryans, which they want to distinguish from other races like Semites, peoples in the Middle East like Arabs and Jews, and Hamites, people in North Africa and the Horn of Africa. And so if you have a racial hierarchy here, then this puts Aryans up at the top. All of this is happening as empires are expanding in Europe, and you've got the intellectual bouillabaisse of Darwin's theory of evolution, which then gets applied to race and eugenics by other thinkers to come up with the concept of social Darwinism. All of these thinkers then see the Aryans as a progenitor race of Europeans, and of course these white Europeans have these world empires, they're conquering the world, they must be the best race. And this thinking is put into books by folks like this Frenchman, Arthur de Gaboneau, or this British fellow here, Houston Stewart Chamberlain. In the case of Germany, nationalism plays a key role as well. The modern nation of Germany was brand new in the mid-19th century, so they're trying to catch up with other European nations like France, and they also see themselves as heirs to the culture of ancient Greece. This is something, for example, that comes out a lot, say, in the work of Friedrich Nietzsche. It also explains why Wagner writes operas in the way that he does. He's trying to make them like Greek tragedy. You might think, what about the folks living in Greece? Well, to folks in Germany and many other Europeans at the time, they weren't really Greek anymore. They were Slavs, or they were just Turks through the Ottoman Empire. All of this, too, is the background to Hitler's own racial ideas in rhetoric. But the Germans now are taking this a step farther. It's not just that they're Aryans, they have to be the best kind of Aryan, the Nordic subtype. And all of this stuff, by the way, including this Nordic subtype, is based on the shape of skulls. This is the now discredited science of phrenology, but basically saying that the typical Caucasian skull shape, that's the best kind. And then, you look at this skull from China or this skull from Africa, these things are, not the best. It's all a bunch of hogwash. It also comes out really clearly, this Germany is the new ancient Greece, in the way that Germany puts on the 1936 Olympic Games, a sort of triumph of Aryanism. It is also the first Olympic Games, by the way, where you get the whole tradition of the Olympic torch. And it comes out even more clearly than that in the companion film made for the Olympics, the movie Olympia, which came out 2 years later by the German director Leni Riefenstahl, pictured here. You can see on the poster for the film, which is also the first shot of the movie, you've got this very carefully composed shot of a German white athlete, a discus thrower, explicitly modeled on this 5th century statue by Myron called the Discobulus, or the discus thrower. Even the position is relatively the same. For the Germans, the fact that this statue is white is part of the whole appeal. They didn't realize that this statue would have been very brightly painted with probably fairly tanned skin, because it's the Mediterranean, when it was originally put up. So all of these ideas in the 19th century about white racial superiority are coming together, combined with this idea that European civilization, defined as roughly Greco-Roman, is the most important thing, and that Germany, more than any other country, is the true heir to that. So that's where this idea of the fake Aryan race comes from, as opposed to the real Indo-Iranian Aryans who existed thousands of years ago. Okay, everybody, if you have any questions, you can find me in room 158. Thanks for your time.